like you said, you start meeting all these men, like there are good ones out there. You have a different opinion about what's out there. Whereas for me, I'm like, everyone's a serial killer. Okay, welcome to the show today, Lizzie. How are you, babe?
Thank you. I'm super well, thank you. Very happy to be here. Thank you, Jade.
That's good. I'm so happy that you're here. So Lizzie and I know each other. We used to work together, but you are in today freezing cold New Zealand, aren't you? All rugged up.
Yeah, freezing cold and sunny. You just never know what you're going to get.
I know, I like it. I've never been to New Zealand, so just throw it in my face. Why don't you? I want to come meet you over there one day. It would be so cool. But today we have Lizzie on the show. She is a relationship coach and she helps women manifest the relationships of their dreams by understanding their self-worth. So just threw that in there for you. So tell us a little bit about who you are and how you got to this point in your business.
Well, I didn't ever really know where to begin. So back in the very beginning, I was the young, chunky girl who fit in and never thought she was chunky. Young and
oh, bless.
And who used to get picked on in school, and so always naturally had those sorts of self-love and self-worth issues, but not the conscious awareness of it. And I always felt like I was kind of on the fringe of society. I never really felt like I really had my place, and even in the country I was living in, I was back in the UK, I never really resonated with it. So for me, it's just been a long journey of self-discovery since I would say I was about 17. And I really developed my confidence when I was working in hospitality, particularly running bars. And I think in that environment, you naturally get to know people really well. And you get to understand a lot about human nature. You get to see people at their very best, at their very worst. You see it all. And I think that just brought about this huge curiosity in me about people in general. And that naturally led to me connecting with lots of men and having wonderful dating relationships and sort of discovering my more sensual femininity and embracing the person that I was truly becoming and blossoming into. And that then led me to pursue traveling after a couple of failed relationships. And by failed, I mean that, the typical story of not attracting a narcissistic partner who had 2 other relationships outside of our.
Oh no.
And finding out while at a night out and then being cheated on by the first guy that I was ever truly in love with. Like, it was just this cycle of attracting partners that never really truly valued me. And it was because I didn't really truly value myself just yet. And I made the bold decision to go and travel around the world. And all I wanted was to find my place in the world and also to attract a one-woman man and to believe that a one-woman man existed. When you grow up and you see marriages and you see other people's relationships, and of course you have your own experience, and you're told your whole life that this beautiful romantic fairy tale exists, and that when people get married, it means they're going to be happily ever after and they're going to be loyal to each other forever. And then you see the reality that actually cheating is rife and lying is common, and even having double lives is becoming somewhat of a normality. And I really started to lose my faith in realizing that there could be anything better. So I really plunged myself and my energy into trying to manifest a one-woman man. And I did. I manifested a wonderful partner of mine called Jimmy, who I ended up spending 4 years with, and we traveled the world together and ended up in New Zealand together. And it was such a wonderful relationship for the first 3 years. But then there was that classic paradox of when one person is discovering personal development and serving others and working on themselves and another person isn't, and it's just very difficult to then come together and find common ground. And we kind of got to that place where Jimmy's mental health was very much declining and he didn't want help or support, and I did everything I could, but you can't help someone who doesn't want to be helped. And then I was really stepping into my own power and becoming a woman and becoming confident and feeling successful and realizing that I've got these gifts to give other women.
Yes, queen.
Yeah, that was life-changing. So naturally that relationship had to come to an end. And I'd say that one of the most catalytic moments of my own personal growth was when I ended that relationship, and the next day we went into lockdown. So I had to put Jimmy on a one-way flight back to the UK.
Oh no. What timing? Yeah. Jesus.
It was hectic. So I'd been away from home for 3 years, and I ended that long-term relationship, had to put him on a one-way flight. The next day, I was in a whole new reality. I was completely alone
Yeah.
on the other side of the world from all my family and all my closest friends, going into this whole new realm of unknown. But that in itself, after a couple of days of it being terrifying,
Yeah.
unbelievably empowering, because I had only myself to heal and to lean on. So I just got into journaling, and because I was going through the breakup and feeling the grief of that, I was literally journaling love letters to Jimmy about how I was feeling about the breakup, so that I wouldn't message him.
Yeah.
And there was
and that's healthy. It takes strength not to pick up your phone.
Honestly, it was so challenging, but at the same time, it was so cathartic. And that kind of was almost a positive spiral of realizing that I can actually delve into myself and get all the answers that I'm looking for. And if I can do that, then what can't I do? What can't I change? You know, I'd become this identity of someone who is body positive. Fully, I love the fact that we can embrace ourselves where we're at, but also it become a bit of a toxic thing for me. Like, I was really quite overweight and not truly happy about it. I'd be deleting photographs taken of me, not really confident in my own body. And surely that would not do positive things for my manifestation of a partner. So it was something I had to address. And so I started to kind of unpack and unravel the different aspects of my life that I'd grown up with a story around, and asked myself, how would I actually like to show up for this? What would I like to experience?
Good question.
That naturally led to a huge turnaround for my fitness. I lost 30 kilos, and
yes, good girl.
Thank you. And I've been training full time ever since. So I've never been stronger. And I also started to think, well, I want to learn more about relationships in a more positive way, where there's less of the constraints. Now, I learned that the thing that hurt most about being cheated on, or even just being let down, or having your expectations kind of ignored in a relationship, was that it's the breaking of an agreement. Like on Valentine's Day, it's an agreement. You get your partner a card. On their birthday, you do something nice for them. If that doesn't happen, it's hurtful because the agreement's been broken.
Interesting.
You're going to say?
Interesting. I was like, oh shit, I never realized I entered into an agreement. An unspoken agreement of gift giving. That's true though. Yeah, that's an interesting way to look at it.
It's this, I found that it's kind of the same with being cheated on as well. Like, I found that when I kind of reflected on those experiences, the thing that hurt most was the betrayal. I knew that they loved me. I knew that I don't know what happened with the other girl, but I knew it was nothing serious. But it's the fact that they betrayed my trust, and they'd broken that agreement of us being honest with each other and being there for each other. So I kind of removed those agreements from the relationships that I pursued moving forward, and explored polyamory, and that taught me so much. So now I feel like I've got this big bundle of wealth of knowledge and experience about relationships, what relationships really are and what they're really supposed to be. And I really want to be able to share that with women and help them to consciously manifest what they're looking for in their life, and also help them to examine what is inside of them that might be holding them back from being truly happy, what stories they've been telling themselves, or what stories they've been told by others. So in my program, The Magnetic Woman, that is the whole focus of it. It's just helping the woman become and attract. Love it.
That is so powerful. I was getting like goosebumps while you were talking. You're so empowering. I was like, yes, I'm so excited. I want to write notes. I was like trying to write notes while you were talking, so I wasn't being rude. I was like, oh my God, she's saying such magic. Thank you so much for sharing, babe. And by the sounds of it, in such a short time as well, you've experienced so much, whether it's with your ex-partner or your multiple partners, or just with yourself. And if we can go back a little bit, I found it very interesting that because it's hard enough recovering after a breakup, let alone being alone in a pandemic on day one. So talk to me about what that was like, how you were feeling when you broke up. Was it mutual, or you broke up with him?
I broke up with him.
Right. Okay. So this is an assumption, but did you kind of come off then as a little bit better than he did because you initiated the breakup? Obviously, you still were quite hurt.
Yeah. It was a tough one because he never did anything to hurt me.
Yeah.
that we were just not aligned anymore. And he had been in such survival mode that my needs in the relationship were just being neglected. So by staying in that relationship, I was teaching myself that my needs don't matter.
Yes.
And
yeah.
So I got really sick of that message to myself.
Yes. And it's interesting you point that out. That's really what I'd want to talk about as well. Because I think the hardest breakup is when no one has done anything wrong, but they're the hardest breakup because we value ourselves enough to go, I'm not going to settle, or I want a bit more than this. Or like you acknowledged, it takes a lot to acknowledge that I'm kind of dimming myself and I'm holding myself back just for the other person's sake. And, you know, although there are moments in a relationship where we can be selfless, but not like that. So talk to me a little bit about how you came to realize that you were doing that and the effects that it had on you at the time.
Well, I didn't even really feel joyous anymore. You know, I'd come home and the bedroom door would be closed. It would all be dark because he'd be like a bear in a cave, bless him. There was just no joy in that environment anymore. I felt like I was giving all the time and I was paying for all the therapy and all of the different modalities that I tried. Like he wouldn't get a coach, so I became one, and I did everything I could have. I did everything I could have. But that's just it. What was I doing for me?
Yeah.
If I'm doing all that for someone who wouldn't even get me a card for Valentine's Day, what am I telling myself?
Yeah.
And there's only so long you can go along that path for. And I think that in relationships, self-abandonment is the thing that scares me the most. And I think when it can be such a small trigger, it can be such a small thing. It can be one thing that's been said, or one text message that you see that's been sent to someone that shouldn't have been, whatever the trigger might be. If you're getting the message that your needs are being ignored, that you're being betrayed or you're being let down, and you allow that to happen, you're telling yourself that you don't deserve better.
Yeah.
And the universe hears that message too. So they'll just keep sending you more of the same thing.
Yeah.
And I think when we're so young, but we're the oldest we've ever been, it's really hard to remember we are so young. We have time. We have time. We've got everything going for us. And if we truly believe that the man is out there for us, we have to clear everything out of the way that's going to stop him from coming to us. And sometimes that can be a relationship that we love and cherish, but we're not getting treated right. If we know and we feel something's not right, we as women are very intuitive, then it's our responsibility to ourselves to act on that. Regardless of how painful it is, we will always be okay. Like, we go through childbirth. We have
we've got this.
Whatever it is, we can cope.
Yeah, 100%. It's so interesting that you were talking about, like, the more that we put up with it, just the universe is sending us that back, because that's what we're saying that we're okay with and we want to deal with. And it makes me think of reasons why we stay when our partners cheat on us. Like, I remember when I was 14 in my very toxic relationship, and I would just continue to stay after all the cheating. And my reason was, but I really like his niece. Like, his niece is my world. I love her so much. And if I break up with him, I'm not going to see her. And now I think back and I'm like, I was 14. Like, I can meet plenty of other nieces. Like, I know that sounds harsh to the little girl, but it's like, you can't hold on to little connections that you have or hope that you have somewhere in the relationship because of one thing, but you allow yourself to get cheated on all the time and treated like shit and emotional abuse. It's like, there's no give or take in that. It's like, you can also be in a loving family where your partner loves you and respects you and holds that trust with you. And that's the paradigm. And because we're so young, we either don't have that life experience yet, or that self-worth, or the courage to say, I'm not putting up with this. So unfortunately, I feel like we have to go through it a few times to build ourselves up. But that's fantastic.
And it's funny for us in our generation as well. I don't know, I'm not sure if it's the same experience for you, but I know that in my own experience, looking at my parents' marriage has always, up until recently, looked utterly inspiring to me. It looked like the absolute goal. They met within 2 weeks, they were engaged. They've been together ever since. But now as I get older, some realities have come out that I actually would not want to perpetuate in my own relationship. So it's almost as though my parents met and they were like this, and over time they've been like this.
Yeah. They did the opposite.
Yeah. Whereas I feel like that is almost, that model and that idea that that's the ideal almost shames a relationship, that when you do come together in the beginning and things are challenging, which I think is really natural, because you're learning each other's boundaries, you're learning about each other's past trauma and each other's past triggers. I think it's natural for things to be challenging in the beginning.
Yes.
The honeymoon phase is bullshit. And for you to come together and get really good at overcoming those challenges.
Yes.
Take a different trajectory, which I also think is completely okay. But circling back to your point about being cheated on and why we stay, I truly believe that we accept the love we think we deserve. And I truly believe that where our self-love lies is the exact limit of the abuse we're willing to tolerate. So if we get to a point where we would treat ourselves just not quite as well as our partner treats us in the good moments, or we get to a point where we are treated just a little bit worse than we would treat ourselves, that's the point when we leave. Essentially, if you allow yourself to be treated worse than you would treat yourself in your worst moment, that's when you're really likely to give up on the relationship, and that's when you've hit your limit. But up until then, depending on where your self-love lies,
that's exactly it. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. And it's hard because, like you said, when we're a little bit older and we find our feet and we find our voice, for a lot of us, we come into personal development and we do these seminars and we meet people and we get coaches and mentors, or, meet the people in the programs. And for me, that was probably a huge turning point for my self-worth, because I learned what a good relationship was. I learned what good communication was. And I just felt like myself in personal development. I came out there like a shining star, or a shooting star, more like it, bursting out the doors. And then you have to go back into reality and it feels dull. And you compare to how you felt in that room. And it's like, hang on a minute. I'm definitely two different people here. I'm my vibrant, bubbly, excitable, happy self here when I'm being lifted up, when I'm being heard, when I'm being appreciated. But when I'm coming home and there's a toxic relationship, it's now I'm going, now I know what it's like to feel empowered. And I'm definitely not going to stand for this shit anymore. And you want to do something, right?
Yeah.
So maybe personal development for some of you is what you need. But if personal development isn't there, it could be a conversation with a friend or your parents, or like for you, Lizzie, maybe it's comparing it to a relationship with your parents. So you said that you've always looked up to your parents, or you did look up to your parents' relationship. Did you ever compare your relationships you were in with them? Because that's for such a long time and a young age, maybe that's all you had to compare it to. Did you find yourself naturally doing that?
Absolutely. I think there was a huge part of me that was always looking for a man who would represent the same strength and love and loyalty that my dad does to me. And I gotta say that I don't regret that journey. I'm really glad that I went on that journey, but I feel even more enlightened and empowered now to find something even better. I think there's some things in my parents' relationship which I personally wouldn't want in my own. But I still consider it to, of course, be an extremely successful relationship and very inspiring. I just feel really grateful to have kind of expanded beyond that. And I really, truly believe in my heart and soul that there is a perfect relationship out there for everyone. And by perfect relationship, I don't mean that it's going to be sunshine and rainbows every day. I just mean that even when it's not, you're not going to feel abused.
Yes. That's called a healthy relationship. It's normal not to be abused, guys. And that's that threshold that you were talking about, like what it would take to leave. But what's your benchmark? Like for you, you watched your dad as this beautiful, strong male role model. That's your benchmark of, this is the kind of man I want, minimum.
Yeah,
you're minimum. Fucking shining knights coming in, like, on a horse with a sword, like, I've got you, queen, because that's your bare minimum, and for some of us, what's their bare minimum, really low. For myself, my parents broke up when I was young. My dad was not a good man. So, and this is why it's really important. I have these conversations with my family, with my friends. You should always, especially if you have kids, staying for the kids is not a good idea. Because like you talk about stories, and what teaches us from a young age is kids see everything and they intake everything, and that's what they develop as their story. So if they're in that environment of, you know, dad treats mum like shit, or mum puts up with it and mum doesn't do anything about it, they're then teaching the kids to go, that's my benchmark. That's what I'm going to put up with. Like, for how long? Oh, that's the type of men that I can look forward to when I go out in the big wide world. Right. And I know we don't have kids, but that's always been super fascinating to me in terms of what is around us when we're young and what it teaches us. And it's so interesting because a lot of my relationships up until I met probably my ex-fiance, I was cheated on multiple times and abuse. And it's like, it's a pattern that we're taught. Right. And God, I love my mum so much and I appreciate her and she is my rock, but it's like, she didn't leave for a very, very long time. So what does it teach us? You know? So it's interesting, the two dynamics of what you were around and what your benchmark was and what other people's benchmark is. And it's really sad. And you see it continue in patterns, unfortunately.
It's true. It's true. And it's up to us to change that.
Yes.
You know, we are so aware as a generation, particularly in the personal development world. Like, if your wonderful listeners are listening to your podcast, you're on this vibe. Like, you get it. Yeah. And I think that I heard this quote at a workshop once. It said, what you don't transform, you transfer. So we have a responsibility
that's
to
good.
Yeah,
that's good shit. Yeah.
So we have a responsibility to transform the things that we would not want to carry forward in our own life. And my question that I have asked myself before in relationships, and that I would encourage my clients, I do encourage my clients to ask themselves, is what is more painful? Staying in the relationship where you know you're not being treated the way you ought to be, but of course you love the guy, he's the most beautiful guy in the world. I know, girl, I get it.
I know. Yep.
He's gorgeous, you love him, I get it.
Yeah.
But this is happening.
Yep.
What's more painful? Staying in that cycle of grief and betrayal and sadness, and then of course all the good things that come around when the Ferris wheel goes back to the top again, or walking away now knowing that something better is out there for you. Like, if someone said to you, your ideal relationship is 2 months away from you, but you got to get rid of this guy first, what would you do? A guy who's going to treat you better, who's just as wonderful, is just 2 months away from you. If you get rid of this relationship, what would you do?
And a lot of girls, because you said you know that something out there is better, and I'm so sorry if you girls are in the position where you don't believe something is, that you don't deserve better, or something better isn't going to come along, because I wish that you could see what we see, and 100% that's not true. There is always something better. Everyone deserves to be treated well and like a queen and with respect. So if you can't see that right now, just for shits and gigs, break up with him. Just test it, you know, just for shits and gigs. You'll be surprised what is out there for you and what you're worth, but you have to believe at your core. And I think for some girls that are in that position where they go, I'm not going to find anyone better than this, and I'm sorry that you feel that way, but I think that's bullshit. As much as you believe that, I think there's definitely something deep down in your core. Otherwise you wouldn't be sad every day. You'd be happy that he was abusing you, because you're like, oh, this is fun. This is a good relationship. If you're sad and you're angry and you're confused and you want out, that means deep down you believe that there's better out there. So cut the shit. Break up with him, girl. And like Lizzie said, 2 months from now, Prince Charming is there.
That's it. And it's just about sitting in faith and possibility. Like, if those girls who are going through that situation, Jade and I have been there, we get it. We know that feeling. And I am sure that we wish that we could go back to our past selves and say, hey, I know you can't see this now, but things are going to get better. There is something better out there for you. Because we know, looking back, it's true. Hindsight's always 20/20, right?
Yeah.
In that moment, it's about resting in faith and possibility. And if you can't trust yourself and your own judgment on that, then trust the universe. You wouldn't be being sent the message, this is not okay, this doesn't feel right for me.
Yes.
If there
Gut
were
feeling. That's so true. I really like that. And I think the more I work on myself and my self-worth, my intuition or my gut feeling gets stronger, because you're right. The more connected you are to whatever you believe in, universe or religion, it's something's pulling you toward what is better for you. And the more that you believe your self-worth and the more that you believe you deserve better, you will be pulled more strongly in the other direction. So it's so interesting to me. And I think, yeah, what a deep topic. We've talked about so much. I'm just like, where was I going? My brain's had a brain fart again. Yeah.
I think the piece about sitting in faith is so important. And I think the analogy of if your perfect relationship was 2 months away, it's not so much about the 2 months. It's about the knowing that it's out there. And it's about the faith that it's coming to you. If you can sit in that faith and possibility, we can all agree you're far more likely to attract it into your life. But it's simply not going to happen if the space isn't there. If the space is being occupied by what's not for you, it's literally postponing the ability for what is for you to come in.
Yeah. Yeah. Would you say that you have always manifested your relationship, or what does manifestation mean to you or look like to you?
To me, it looks like a process. And I don't mean the process of it necessarily. I mean the process of all of it. So with manifestation, for me, it comes from a place of absolute awareness and understanding of yourself and your own needs and what you really want to bring in.
Yeah.
And very consciously stepping into the feeling of already having it and being grateful for receiving it before it comes to your life, and truly resting in that faith that it's coming to you. But then there's another process that we go through. So sometimes when you manifest the exact thing that you want and it's here, it's in your reality, you then get the opportunity to examine, is this actually what I really want? Or do I need to go through this process again with another level of clarity? Yeah. And I believe that with relationships at the age that we're at, I believe there is a process of that. I believe that the first person we attract is not necessarily the person we should be with forever. And what we're doing through those experiences is, of course, adding value to the other person's life and them adding value to ours. And we're being a part of each other's personal growth and shaping each other. And that's a beautiful thing. But I think it also, through experience, you get really aware of what you actually need, what are your non-negotiables, and what are the things that you really want in a relationship. And you are allowed to not settle for something that falls short of that. You're allowed to decide for you that's not what you want and keep moving forward. But take note, those lessons have come to you for a reason. So if you're writing the list of all the things you want a perfect partner to be, don't leave anything out, because if you leave a few things out, that man's going to come to you and then you'll become aware of it.
Yeah. And it's interesting you talk about lessons as well, because I'm a big believer. I haven't decided yet, but I'm thinking more along the terms of, I don't think we have a soulmate. And I know that's harsh coming from a relationship coach, but I'm a big believer that every relationship teaches you something different at a different time in your life. It's all lessons, right? And unfortunately, a lot of those are going to be hard lessons. It teaches you what you don't want and what you don't deserve. And like you said, it's character building as well. And something that I think I missed out on, because I'm such a relationship person. I'm very romantic. Like, I love connection. Something I think I missed out on was that really long dating phase. I haven't really had a dating phase. And like you said, girls, if you're still single, I think it's so important now, looking back on it, to just date. Like, don't commit to anyone, just date, because you learn so much about yourself. And like Lizzie said, it teaches you what you do like in a man, what you don't like in a man. And every time you leave that date, you add something to your do and don't list, the pros and cons. Don't like fucking assholes that are a tradie or something like that. Like, don't like FIFO workers, something like that, you know? Love guys that pick the place we're going to eat on a date. Like, it builds up, and we're manifesting this character in our head of eventually meeting that person that you've been manifesting, like Lizzie said. So get out there and date, girls.
I cannot agree more. It is so important. And I firmly believe that when you're in that dating phase, if you're not absolutely loving it, you're not doing it right.
Oh, shit. Did you have a pretty wild dating phase? What was yours like?
You're
like, how R-rated is your
I know, now the reason it meant so much to me is because it came with so much self-discovery, and I learned so much about men that I didn't know.
Yes.
I didn't know how sensitive and caring and committed they can be.
Yeah.
I didn't know how important they could make me feel. I genuinely didn't realize before my dating phase, and I stand firmly in this, that all a healthy, well-heeled, evolved man wants is to make you happy.
Yeah.
All they want.
Keyword healthy man. I love that. Yeah. Because do you think, for me, because I watch so many crime documentaries and I didn't have that proper like dating phase, I think my version of men is very one-sided. Like, I'm just terrified of men. I think I was single for a good 2 months and I was like, didn't go home with anyone. I was like, every man's horrible. Like, I'm going to die. They're scary as fuck. And I didn't go home with anyone. I was like, nah, not ready. But if you, like you said, you start meeting all these men, like there are good ones out there, you have a different opinion about what's out there. Whereas for me, I'm like, everyone's a serial killer.
See, and hey, it's good that you're cautious, you know.
I'm aware, yeah.
In the world we live in today, you don't know what's around the corner. But I have to say, during my dating experience, I had so much fun. And it was light-hearted, and I could be so honest with them, and it was such a wonderful discovery. Like, I remember one date in particular where I had firmly decided that until I meet a man that I truly believe I could marry and be happy with forever, I'm not getting into a monogamous relationship. Like, I'm not available for it.
Yep.
And so I was going on all these dates and attracting all these wonderful partners, but still staying firm in that boundary that if I'm not 100% certain that I could marry this guy and be happy with him forever, I'm not getting into a monogamous relationship. And I'd have to explain that to some of them. You know, it would get to the point where I've been on a couple of dates, they'd ask what I'm looking for, and I'd have to say very honestly, like, I'm not actually available for a monogamous arrangement right now, but I really like you. I really would love to keep seeing you. If you could be cool with this, I would love that. But if not, I fully respect your boundaries. And with some, that didn't resonate. With some, it did. That led to these beautiful relationships that went on for a year plus, where all we did was support each other's happiness, embrace each other, enjoy our absolutely authentic connection without any of the societal constraints. The relationship itself could just be.
Yeah.
The relationship is not always the agreement, it's the connection. And removing the agreements, what literally our only agreement was, we'd be completely honest, we'd be safe, and we never lie to each other. And if anything changes, we talk about it. It was beautiful, and it was safe for everyone. And it meant that we could really just explore what connection is and what relationship is without the rules.
And without losing that person you had the connection with, because they were still around. Did you feel like you got something different from each man as well? Like that, because you were trying to find out what you like and what different connections are as well. So you had like all your boyfriends were different in some way. Yeah. That's so cool.
Yeah.
You know what polyamory was before you started? Because that's quite confident in coming out and saying, no, this is what I want. Like, I don't want one man. Like, I want to just see what's out there. I'm worth multiple connections. Like, how did you get to that point of confidence and self-worth and understanding what polyamory was?
Honestly, it was such a natural transition for me, because it was something I'd always been curious about. I have always been curious about the rules, the tick box, the checklist life. I'd always wanted to sort of test those boundaries and understand it on a deeper level. And relationships is something that I really wanted to understand on a deeper level, because I truly believe that the person you marry decides the kind of life that you're going to have. Because, you know, when we get into a relationship with someone, we don't just get into a relationship with the best of them. We get into a relationship with all their past trauma, all their bullshit, all their triggers, everything.
Yes.
So it has to be somebody who can truly run as fast as you can, and who you have the same goal and values with. Like, I always come back to it being a values match. And exploring polyamory meant that we could have relationships and connections that are purely based on the values. and could kind of explore that connection, and I could get more familiar with what I wanted in a relationship and what I didn't. Now, I only met, excuse me, one man during that period of time who I truly felt I had a values match with, and who I truly felt I could marry one day, and who I truly felt was just an absolute cut above the rest. And they were all wonderful.
Yeah.
Men. Before that experience, I didn't truly know how wonderful men could be.
Yeah.
So wonderful to go into teaching women about relationships from that place of loving already what they're going to experience.
Aww.
And so I met Alistair, and I remember when I first met him, I had never seen such a beautiful man before in my whole life. I remember texting my friend at the time just saying, I am in deep shit.
Girl, get married.
Everything's just changed for me. But it took us a while to, because we're from a completely different world, it took us a while to kind of calibrate to a point where we could really trust each other and actually decide that, yeah, this connection is something we want to explore in a monogamous agreement. And I'm so glad that we did. It's been such a wonderful experience. And it was, I'm going to share this with you and your listeners because I think it's funny. Go
for it.
When Alistair told me that he was in love with me, I'd been in love with him for a year, and I straight up said to him, he said, you know, I'm in love with you, and I'm in love with who you're becoming. And I said, I've loved you for a year. You've been my ultimate this whole time.
It's taken you this long to love me? Like, come on.
Outrageous. But I also really respected the fact that there are some things he wanted to work on within himself before getting into a relationship. I think that's such a beautiful thing. Yes. But it was funny because he said, but my only concern is that you're seeing other people. And I said, well, this might sound really weird, but just let me make a couple of calls and I can take care of that.
Wow. So you were still dating other people when you met him, and you cut them off?
Yeah.
Wow.
But I literally, because they were all aware. They were all aware of everything that was going on for me. I was aware of everything that was going on for them. When I told them that, you know, Alistair and I had gotten together, they were incredibly supportive and so happy for me because a lot of them knew.
Like a big happy family that's like, yeah, good for you. She's getting married. That is so cool. What very mature men as well. Mature, understanding men.
That's the thing. I think that they and I gave each other the opportunity and the space to bring our very best to the table and work on our bullshit. And it was such a wonderful healing experience for everybody, because there was just this constant flow of gratitude and appreciation and complete authenticity. Like, imagine removing every obligation from a relationship. What would be left? And I think in our own relationships, whatever we've decided upon, I think it's important to examine that from time to time. That's been a really big takeaway from the experience for me.
Yeah. And did they have, because I know you were very assertive in what you wanted in terms of being able to explore still and have other relationships, did they have their own boundaries as well in terms of what you could and couldn't do, or what they could do, anything like that?
That was a really interesting thing. So with a couple of them, they weren't okay with the fact that I was seeing other people, so they didn't want to keep seeing me in the dating capacity, but we stayed really good friends.
Okay.
And that was wonderful as well. But then a lot of them, they didn't ever put rules on me. There was just this understanding that we were going to be honest with each other about everything, and that we would keep some things on a need to know basis, but that we would always keep each other safe, care for each other, be there for each other. There was this understanding that whatever is coming up for the person, they've got a teammate in it. Like, there was one guy who I was seeing for over a year, and we weren't intimate for 6 months when he was going through a bad patch with his mental health, but you know, I would still be there for him every bit as much. And but imagine if that had been a monogamous relationship, imagine the effect that would have had on both of us, and the guilt that would be involved, and the frustration. But because it wasn't, it gave him the space to work on it without that guilt piece, and without the whatever might have come with that. And it gave me the freedom to show up for him with nothing but joy and appreciation and support.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And were some of them seeing other people as well, or?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. That's so beautiful. I don't know if you heard my episode before this one. We actually talked about like open relationships and Ashley, who I interviewed, they weren't in a polyamorous relationship, they were in an open relationship. So it's so cool that we're naturally exploring this now.
Yeah.
And I think so as well. I think it's natural to not be committed, although I am right now. I don't think it's natural to be committed to one person, because I think you like things about different people and you get different things from different people and connections and, like you said, values. I think it's really bad to put all of your expectations on one person, because they can only give you so much personality or so much emotion or energy. And I think it's wrong to ask of that from one person and just the two of you. So it's cool that you had the opportunity to, because if it's a relationship, you're able to lean on that person, right? But if you have multiple, it's like, it's more energetically for you to lift you up, and vice versa. You were lifting them all up as well. So it's just blows my mind. I'm only just learning about it and I'm so fascinated. So tell me everything. It's great.
There's a whole other piece for me as a woman energetically that came with this that I didn't expect. So, when you're in a monogamous relationship and you get cheated on and you feel like that person has chosen that other girl over you, and you feel like they must, and this kind of sends you on that loop of, oh, they must be prettier than me, they must be hotter than me, I wonder if they're a better kisser, if they're better in bed, whatever it might be. Yeah. But I learned from my own experience with polyamory that anything that happened with any of my beautiful men had zero effect on how I felt about any of them. So I loved Alistair the entire time, but he wasn't quite ready for the relationship until he was ready, and that's fine. Yeah. But anything that happened over here with anything else had zero effect on how I felt about him.
Yeah.
It never changed anything. I still absolutely adored him. And I never compared them to each other. I never felt like they were comparing me to anybody else. And I think that was such an important lesson, because in a monogamous relationship, you almost feel obliged to say, no, I love you the most, or no, you guys were completely different, or whatever it might be. You're almost obliged to appease the person and tell them what you think they want to hear. And even if the partner is not doing that, even if they're being completely honest, we as the girlfriend might think they're just telling us what we want to hear.
Yes.
But I can tell those women who've had that experience that it is true. There is no comparing any one woman to another. There is no effect on a man's love for you based on what happens with him and somebody else, or what he thinks about with somebody else. We are all so truly unique and special that they can't even love each of us in the same way. What we have with our man is completely special and unique and sacred, and nothing can penetrate that and change it. I think that if a man is cheating or being disloyal, it's perhaps a wound in him, or perhaps he's just not supposed to be monogamous. It's worth exploring both.
Yeah. Do you think you have to be, when I say ready, quote unquote, ready for polyamory, and when I say ready, I mean with your own self-worth? Because otherwise, were you ever not ready at a stage and maybe jealousy came into play, or your emotions or anything like that? Or do you just felt confident enough to say you're ready for it?
It was really interesting journey and I didn't expect to feel as comfortable with it as I did. I don't think I was ready for it as such, but I don't know if ready for it exists. I think the things that I learned about relationships and connection, and about all the nuances within that, I don't think that people necessarily have to go through polyamory in order to learn that. All you got to do is sign up with me as a client. I'll teach you everything I know.
What a selfless plug. Good for you, girlfriend. Let me teach you.
Yeah, that's it.
I love that.
I think it's really important also to ask people about relationships if you really truly want their advice. Like for me, I personally, in my younger years, I would have asked my parents about relationship advice, but now I actually wouldn't, because as much as I love and cherish their relationship and value their relationship, it's actually not what I want. Therefore, I'm not going to take the advice.
Yes. Only take advice from people you would trade places with.
Yes, exactly. And if you feel like somebody's had an experience where they've learned a certain thing that could add value to your current situation.
Yes.
But I think other than that, I think we've got to be really careful about who we ask advice from.
Yes, agreed. And that's why it's so hard. If you have friends that maybe don't agree with the values of polyamory, or they've just been cheated on, and maybe you have different recovery tactics or whatever it is, I think it's so hard to have conversations without judgment and wanting to give your opinion, or people telling you their opinion. And it's kind of like, how do you block it out but still be respectful? Like, thank you so much for giving me your opinion. I'll take that into account. Please kindly fuck off.
Yeah. I have this blanket rule in my own life where I just don't believe that sentences should ever start with "you should."
Yes, that's
and
good.
I think if somebody is shoulding on you,
yes. Oh my God, that's so good. I like that.
Yeah.
That's going to be like a trigger for a wall up now. Everyone's like, "You should." I'm like, that word is not allowed in here. Thank you. That word is banned. You should. I like that. Okay, well, we've had such a rich and open conversation. Thank you so much for being so honest with us and open with us. I really appreciate it. I know the listeners, I'm trying to go over everything we spoke about, and I'm like, I want to have so many conversations with people. It's so interesting to me, babe. But tell the listeners, I know you've kind of gone into it a little bit already, but tell them a little bit more in depth about what you do and where they can find you and how they can work with you if they want to.
Okay. So I work with women who want to attract a beautiful, loving relationship into their life with a high quality man moving forward. So I essentially work with women who are wanting to attract that man. And I help us to become magnetic. And it's a process of getting really aware of your current self, getting really aware of why you're your current self. So we really examine those stories and we make some dramatic shifts within those. My clients get to have a huge shift in their identity for the better, and they get to become the person they always wish they could have been. And it takes a couple of coaching sessions just to become aware of who that person is and to realize why we've become who we have become, what has actually shaped us, and then to know what we really want in a relationship. So my Magnetic Woman program is all based around that. It's all about becoming the person that you're supposed to be so that you can attract the high quality man who's an authentic match for you. And you can find me on Instagram and my website. It's all the same tag. It's Lizzie, your life coach. Lizzie with an IE, so Lizzie. Your life
Put it in
coach.
the description for sure. That's beautiful. Yeah. Thank you so
And
much.
if you have any questions about anything to do with love, relationships, boundaries, exploration, dating, men in general, if you've got a problem with your partner and you want to discuss it, just slide into my DMs and let's hook up a chat.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to be in there. I have some questions.
Anytime,
girls. That's incredible, Lizzie. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. I've definitely loved having you here, and I know the girls would have really appreciated your presence as well. But thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. And I just want to leave your listeners with the note that they deserve the absolute best in the world. If they can't see it yet, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. They just got to rest in faith and know it's out there and take the steps towards it.
It's 2 months away, guys.
Imagine it's 2 months away.
Oh my God. Thank you so much, honey. We'll talk to you soon.
Talk soon.
Okay, babes, that is it for today's episode. You know the drill. If you want to find more about Lizzie, her stuff will be in the description of today's episode. If you want to follow me and connect, just head to my Instagram, which is JDelPub Coaching, which is also in the bio. In there, you'll see my YouTube, the Facebook group for this podcast. And let's connect. Let me know what you thought about today's episode. If you guys have any questions for myself or Lizzie, please post in the group. We would love to hear from you and your biggest takeaways. All right, guys, I hope you have the best week. Love you guys. Bye.